So now I'd like to welcome up Maria Gray's capstone group. They've been working with OSCRE International this semester. Derek?
Hello everybody, my name is Derek Lee and I'm one of the Deputy Project Managers for Capstone Section 7, working with OSCRE International on building a greener future, leveraging environmental data in real estate. So this is the agenda for today. I'm not going to go over it just for time's sake, but just for your reference. And first things first, I want to give a big thank you to everyone on the team who worked on this project over the course of the semester, and particularly our capstone advisor, Maria Gray. Thank you for your support. So really jumping into it right now. Buildings are inherently energy intensive, and because of this, the real estate industry contributes a lot to climate change. And this is indicated by the 28% of global CO2 emissions coming from building operations alone. And a majority of this comes from the energy requirement from building heating and cooling. And so on top of this, inefficient building designs, limited adoption of energy conscious practices, poor building management further exacerbate these issues. And poor building management in particular can result in knock-on effects such as inconsistent data quality and availability, benchmarking challenges, transparency and environmental reporting constraints, and just an overall impaired decision-making for environmental impact mitigation. And so because of this, there is a real compelling urgency for data consistency across the real estate supply chain, enhanced data accessibility, quality, and transparency, and overall improved climate mitigation capacity. So now jumping into our client, OSCRE. OSCRE stands for Open Standards Consortium for Real Estate, and OSCRE is a nonprofit organization that is mainly focused on addressing real estate asset lifecycle management through its IDM industry data model tool, which helps organizations develop data standards. Outside of this, OSCRE works actively with global real estate data stakeholders such as real estate investment managers, corporate real estate owners and occupiers, software providers, service providers, and consultants. And with the help of these global members, they launched an energy data standard back in September to improve environmental data management and reporting. And what makes OSCRE and their standards unique is that they are a nonprofit organization and their standards are open and available to the public for free. So now looking at our goals and objectives. So one of our objectives for this project was an opportunity assessment in which we revise OSCRE's energy data implementation methodology to streamline it for adoption over the current methodology that they're using with their stakeholders to guide them through the data standards implementation process. And two, a set of recommendations for solutions including a business case for current and emerging technologies and methodologies, a regulatory landscape, as well as a stakeholder engagement and communication plan. So really from the start of the semester, we identified two key stakeholders in the real estate data supply chain, one being corporate occupiers or tenants, and the other one being investment management firms or landlords. And while they had different data supply chains, what was consistent among these two groups was the people that were handling their data along the supply chain. So internal ESG groups, or ESG teams, external data technology and service provider groups, and then external data consultants that worked with these stakeholders. So over the course of the semester, we interviewed and surveyed these stakeholders alongside research into OSCRE's ongoing pilot programs and as well as market analysis. Looking a bit farther into our market analysis itself, in terms of OSCRE's market positioning, one of the key things that we think gives them an advantage over other standards is their comprehensiveness and their openness. In terms of their comprehensiveness, OSCRE focuses on a wide range of energy-related data, while other standards are more focused on smaller property owners and real estate firms. And then on the openness, like I mentioned, OSCRE standards are open and publicly available for free, while other standards have proprietary software that can increase cost of implementation as well as reduce interoperability across the supply chain. So now looking into our key insights, we asked all of our respondents to self-identify their organization's level of data maturity. And so starting from this initial stage, just to explain the stages, going clockwise. So starting at the initial stage where organizations are just figuring out what their data strategy is, what it means, to where they're measuring data, defining their framework for data strategy, actively managing that framework, and then finally refining and optimizing that framework so that they can become data-driven decision makers. And so if you look at this chart, it's very obvious that over 50% of our respondents were in those first two stages, which suggested to us that there's really a bottleneck in stage 3 for these stakeholders, and that they're still trying to figure out their data landscape, but don't have any kind of defined framework around that really impacts their data collection, their movement of data, and their usage of data. And so this kind of leads us into our other insights where our respondents responded that it was considerably challenging for them to collect environmental data from their supply chains. And for the ones that have attempted to introduce OSCRE as an energy standard, they found this to be moderately challenging, which is to be expected with any technical or process change in an organization. But these responses point to a need for OSCRE to simplify and streamline their implementation methodology and also enhance their training in terms of building capacity for data collection. Now looking into our interview insights. So I think the overarching idea with the interview key insights was the necessity of fostering a more unified, collaborative, and adaptable approach to managing and utilizing data across an organization. And this really can be seen in the ways that the stakeholders highlighted issues around disparate systems, siloed operations, and data fragmentation. And so this, along with our survey insights, kind of lead into our analysis and recommendations, which a key point of our recommendations is that revised implementation methodology that takes OSCRE's current methodology that they're using with stakeholders to help guide them through the implementation process and just simplifies that. The stakeholder communication and engagement plan, which is focused on establishing collaboration with third parties and consensus building, as well as highlighting their comprehensiveness and their openness and demonstrating their adaptability to stakeholder needs. In terms of the training and education, enhancing training and education on rapidly changing regulations and integrating new technologies and management systems into existing systems is what we are recommending for education. So looking a little bit deeper into our actual opportunity assessment and that /revised implementation methodology. So the main goal of this is to be used to determine how well suited an organization is to adopting OSCRE standards. And then also, as they go along each of these stages, there's a gating question for them to ask themselves to be able to determine whether they are ready to move on to the next stage. So just to briefly go over each of these stages, the first stage really focuses on recognizing areas within the organization where implementing these standards can really be transformative. Stage 2 is more focused on analyzing and quantifying the costs, benefits, and the risks of implementing these standards. 3 is involved with engaging your stakeholders and partners to make sure that your organizational goals and the standards that you're implementing are in alignment. 4 is the technical implementation that surrounds configuring systems and developing protocols within existing infrastructure. And then finally, stage 5 is the proactive maintenance and continuously monitoring of these new dynamic standards in which the goal is to keep sustainability and relevance over time. So now looking into our strategic timeline, on the short term, we really think that OSCRE should be focused on training and education as well as their stakeholder engagement. This alongside introducing our 5-step methodology to new stakeholders who are trying to implement the standards so that they can get feedback in terms of how effective it is compared to their previous methodology. And then in the medium term, we think that they should be working on their collaborative approach with third parties, especially large-scale business partners, which would enable them to really move the needle in terms of getting more widespread adoption. And then lastly, we think OSCRE is going to continue to build their market presence in the industry and with the goal to eventually become one of, if not the industry standard for these energy data standards. And so now looking at our benefits and risks of the recommendations. So our main benefits and advantages is that we offer an adaptable and interoperable methodology that's simpler and easier for stakeholders to use, and which will streamline the adoption process and make it more approachable. And on the other side, on risks and challenges, there's some risk of additional overhead from this, and additionally, in terms of challenges, some internal process change might be difficult to do in some organizations, as well as just cost and resource availability. And then looking into some of our challenges over the semester, some challenges we faced was data availability and sample size, as well as some of the people that we interviewed were actually on OSCRE's board, so that may have introduced some data bias into our results. And then overall, same thing as every group faced, the time limitation of only having a semester to work on this was a challenge for us. And then before I hand it off for questions, I just want to give some main takeaways that we got from this experience over the semester, and so we really gained an understanding of the importance of standards and strategy in the data supply chain that really connects all aspects of an organization. And we came to realize that this can either create tremendous value for an organization by having data standards, or on the other hand, if they don't, it can create a tremendous organizational risk. And so we also learned industry knowledge into how different data stakeholders collect, use, and move their data, and the challenges they face in doing so. And then lastly, we're able to identify some methods we can deploy to help alleviate these challenges, streamline implementation, and promote the adoption of the standards. And with that, I'll give it up for questions. Must have been pretty good. My man, Leo.
Hi, my name is Leo. I'm from the Sustainability Management Program. Thank you so much, Derek. Maybe one question. What were the most important data points from your point of view that matter in the decarbonization built environment? Like, is it energy consumption? Is it greenhouse gas emissions? Like, just the top 5 data points that we should all be aware of.
Wait, can you, the last part, are you talking about from the interviews that we conducted or just in general?
In general, and maybe what was highlighted by the interviewees in particular, maybe especially when it comes to New York. I don't know if you had that angle, but in general, and any insightful things that were coming out of the interviews.
Well, I mean, at least to speak to the interviews, at least, I think one of, obviously the key part was understanding where they are in terms of their data maturity as we put it on the pie chart, just because it helped us understand more. Once we got the responses from the interviews in terms of their pain points, we could kind of understand, like, okay, they're at this part of the process, and so this makes sense as to why that they're struggling to be able to collect the data because they don't have the defined framework and so on and so on. But in terms of like the key metrics themselves, I think, are you referring to the data standards themselves, or like in reference to that? Sorry, I had to keep passing back to the mic.
Like, which data points we should be aware of if we wanted to decarbonize a building? Which are the key essential data points that we should be tracking? Which KPIs? Is it energy consumption?
For sure, yeah. I think it would definitely be energy consumption, and then probably for buildings specifically, energy intensity is probably the most important, especially like when you put into consideration like density of people within the building and how that energy gets used. So I think those are the main data points. Thanks.